Hi there. Welcome to the annual Lovecraft eZine Halloween show. This is Halloween 2017, and with me today I've got Scott Thomas and Jeff Thomas. Hey guys.
Good
Hey,
evening.
So, guys, give a just real quick introduction of yourselves. Why don't we start with Jeff?
okay. I am a writer of weird fiction, horror, and science fiction, and any combination thereof. My most recent books are Haunted Worlds from Hippocampus Press and The Endless Fall from Lovecraft eZine Press.
Yeah. Okay, Scott.
Well, a lot of people will know me from writing The Sea of Ash. I have nine other published books, one novel, and the others are short story collections. A lot of what I write is old New England ghostly fiction, supernatural, and I have some sort of strange, fantastical work in my collection, Westermead, and my novel, Felon Grey.
All right. And I'm Mike Davis, podcast guy, editor, publisher. Written a little bit, working on some more. So we're going to talk about Halloween. Let me read something real quick here, and I think at least one of you guys will recognize it. There was something in the air. It was more subtle than when Audrey had been younger, but it was still there, flitting leaf-like, fluttering bat-like through the rooms of her heart on a moon-frosted breeze. It was an anticipatory sensation that drew her like some ancient gravity. It beckoned to her with rattling cornstalk voices, singing cider perfume through leaf-sparse branches. Only one day a year she felt it, on the afternoon of October 31st, when all the world seemed to tilt toward the mystical night. That is from a story called Halloween Tea by Scott Thomas, and it's in a collection titled Over the Darkening Fields. So,
Doesn't that summon it up right there?
yeah, it sure does. So
There's
how should we start, guys? Do we want to start with talking about maybe some of our favorite books and movies and books that bring Halloween to mind, that have that embody Halloween to us?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, why don't you start, Scott?
Sure. Well, let's see. Movies. Well, I haven't seen it in a few years, but the John Carpenter Halloween, I love that movie. Very atmospheric. It is so Halloweeny
Yeah.
to me. Uh, and gee whiz. Well, in terms of fiction, there's a short story. I'll show you the magazine it's in.
Okay.
It's in here. It's this is
Oh yes,
coming up
Twilight Zone
Twilight Zone of
magazine.
November '82 issue. A short story called Halloween Girl, and I'm trying to remember by Robert Grant, and a wonderful artwork for it too, if that shows up there at all.
Yeah.
At any rate, it it evokes Halloween just beautifully. The language, the mood. It's about two young kids, and they're like weirdos because they love horror. You know, they flow against the boring gray stream of folks in their town. Excuse me. And so, but it's creepy, and it has the trick or treating in it. Everything about it is just says Halloween vividly to me, and encompasses that magic. You know, it's written by a person that absolutely loves the season.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, in terms of short fiction, a short story by Jeffrey called "The Yellow House" uh, is, to me, captures Halloween and evokes it beautifully, and in many ways, it's one of my traditions is to read that story, both of those stories, if I can.
Yeah, you guys recommended the Twilight Zone story to me several years ago, and I loved it. What,
Yes.
what was that issue again, if anybody wants to look that up,
It's
Scott? Twilight Zone magazine.
yes, it's the November '82 issue. I've seen it on. Amazon or someplace.
Yeah, I think that's where I got it several years ago.
I think so.
So what about you, Jeff?
I think in my case, it's not necessarily there that I'm attracted to movies that involve Halloween, but evoke a Halloween kind of a mood, you know. But that being said, I too love the first Halloween movie. It's a little harder for me to contemplate going back to look at it now, because when I first saw it, there were no slasher movies. It seems so unique, you know, this one mysterious person terrorizing people, and what were his motives? He was so enigmatic, and was he a disturbed human, or was he supernatural, or some kind of combination of both? And I love the movie. I remember enthusiastically telling Scott about it after I had seen it with a friend. But now there's been so many slasher movies afterwards, and the Halloween remake and so forth, that I've never seen and have no, an ambition to see. I think it kind of just, and it's not fair, but it kind of takes away from the specialness of that movie. But
dilutes it a bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Dilutes it a bit, yeah.
I'll still have a fond spot for it forever, though, and it's atmospheric. It gets Halloween across, like Scott was saying. But I'm also these days I'm probably even more fond of Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, and I was confounded when I first saw that too, as a lot of people were, that they were calling it a Halloween movie, and it's totally not related to the first two movies or those that came after. But taking it as its own movie, I think it's creepy and weird and more inventive, and I love it.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about that one because I don't remember who on the show told me a few weeks ago about Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Excuse me, and that it embodied Halloween in that way, and I keep forgetting to watch it. I need to see it.
Oh, so you've never seen it?
No, I haven't.
I would, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I've seen the first two, but I've not seen that one.
It is strange and creepy and really unique.
Oh, cool. It's always nice to have a new movie like that to look forward to.
Sure. But again, with stories and books and movies that I might, partake of during the season, it's more something that's got that kind of creepy, Halloween-y kind of feeling, as opposed to stuff that directly involves Halloween.
Yeah.
I just recently watched, probably for the third time, Session 9. Again, recently, the movie Session 9.
It's a great film.
So creepy, and it's so rich in atmosphere, having been shot in a Danvers State Hospital.
And, I want to see that.
Oh, I got to lend you.
You haven't seen that, Scott? Oh my gosh, yeah, you got to see that.
God, is that a great movie? I love that.
Cool.
And things like that.
I remember it's been about 15 years since I've seen Session 9, but I remember at the time watching the DVD extras, and one of the actors talking about how much that place creeped him out, shooting there.
Oh, I can imagine. They weren't even allowed to film in certain parts of the hospital because they were unsafe. The conditions were unsafe. They were only able to use relatively small section of it because the place was sprawling. And I guess most or all of it's been torn down by now. For Christmas a few years ago, my brother Craig gave me a book about the Danvers Hospital. But they certainly made the most of the atmosphere of the sections of the hospital that they were able to film in. And it is such a disturbing, and it's a tragic movie, and it's just very unsettling. And I think ultimately it's about a genus loci, a bad place. And I think I would think that's a fascinating kind of a concept. Just a bad place that poisons people.
I am intrigued.
Things that so many bad things have happened that it's left an imprint on the place.
Yeah, exactly. Scott, I've got to lend you that DVD for sure.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah. Any others you want to mention, Jeff?
The other day I watched for the second time The Beyond, Italian horror movie. It's pretty corny, but it's got a lot of practical effects of people getting their eyes gouged out and everything, and some creepy zombies and stuff. And it's corny, but the final image of the movie, as the characters, I guess, walk into hell or whatever, it's a very eerie and effective image. It was a fun kind of spooky Halloween type of movie to watch.
Well, I made up a little list as well. Staying on the subject of movies, Something Wicked This Way Comes is really embodies Halloween to me.
I've got to see that.
Me too.
Oh, you haven't seen that? Wow.
No,
Nope.
Have you read the Bradbury story yet?
I haven't. I really should. I love Bradbury.
The first line in the novel, yeah, the first line in the novel and in the movie too is, first of all, it was October, you know, and it just goes from there. It's really, really good movie, made in the 80s. Trick or Treat, which was, I think, 2009, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Trick or Treat with just an R, or treat. And yeah, maybe more than any other movie. I mean, that takes place on Halloween night, and it's I think 4 separate stories that kind of come together of things that are happening on Halloween night in this town.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it's on Netflix, right?
I don't think it's on Netflix right now.
Okay,
but certainly you could rent it on Amazon.
I'll check it out. It's probably one of those things that I saw peripherally and kind of thought that's probably not going to be very good. You know, I should give it a chance.
I liked it. I liked it.
You did? You saw it?
You saw it, Scott?
I did.
Yeah, it is one of those movies where you look at the cover and you think, that looks dumb, but it's actually really good.
Oh, I got to give it a chance.
Yeah. It reminded me of a feel of like illustrated comic novel, or not the right term for it.
A horror comic book, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was cool though.
Yeah, definitely check that out. For anyone who's not seen that and you're into Halloween, and I assume you are if you're watching the show or listening to the show, check out Trick or Treat. And of course, I agree with you guys about Halloween. Sleepy Hollow. Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow.
Yes, that occurred to me too.
Night Before Christmas. I love that movie.
That's on my list too.
Yeah.
And then, of course, last but not least, It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Oh, so. Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, come on. That's just those like watercolor looking kind of backgrounds and the lonely fields and the neighborhood and everything of that was very evocative to me as a kid.
Yes, me too. I swear that helped shape my aesthetic.
Yeah, sure.
Really?
That cartoon. I can swear it did.
For sure.
Really? That's cool to know.
I think it's across that wonderful feeling of being out in the night, and the night seems so huge, and you're just these little figures walking around in the night with the little close glow of your jack-o'-lantern against all that kind of light and everything, you know?
It captured it well.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah. 1966, if I remember correctly.
My word.
Yeah, it's been around a while.
You know, you're old when you all these shows when they first premiered, you know.
Are you guys familiar with a TV movie? Probably, early 80s called Dark Night of the Scarecrow.
Yeah.
That was very Halloween atmospheric. It took place on Halloween too. It's for a TV movie. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I remember that.
If it's available to rent.
I'm not sure.
Dark Night of the Scarecrow. Do you remember the premise?
Yes, it's well, I don't want to say too much about it, but it's about a fellow who's sort of mentally slow, and he's friends with a little girl, and the local kind of hick community is really upset about that, and things happen, and it gets supernatural, and some good fall Halloween atmosphere in it. I would recommend it.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I remember the
Dark Night of the Scarecrow. Okay. And then I put together a little list of books. First of all, October Dreams 1 and 2. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those anthologies, but
I'm familiar with them.
They're very good.
I've heard of them.
Al Sorrentino who edited those? Or?
Yeah. I believe that's right.
Al Sarantino,
Yeah.
he has a story in here.
Oh, no kidding. In that
He
same issue?
does. Yeah.
In the Twilight Zone magazine?
Yeah, that issue. He's got a tale in that one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. That's interesting. A book called The Night Country by Stuart Onan,
I've heard of it.
Familiar with it, yeah.
which is, got one of the best Halloween night openings that I think I've ever read in chapter 1. It's phenomenal. I don't want to bore everybody by reading the whole paragraph, but definitely check out that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's about some kids who died the previous Halloween, and this Halloween they come back a year later to haunt the living.
Oh.
And they died in a car wreck the year before.
Cool. Oh, not cool.
17-year-olds. Yeah, no, but it's a very good book. What else do I have here? I've got Course of Night in the Lonesome October by Roger Zelazny.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites. A lot of people will read one chapter a day every October. I've heard of a lot of people doing that. So, of course, just about anything by Ray Bradbury.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I mentioned Over the Darkening Fields. That really does scream Halloween to me, Scott.
Oh,
I'm not just saying that because you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if you guys have read this, but I just started it. It's a pretty old book. I've been told for years that I should read it, and now I'm reading it and I'm enjoying it so far. Harvest Home. I forget the author.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's his name? Oh, gosh.
Am I right?
What was his name, Jeff?
Thomas Tryon?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Pardon me.
And there was
you guys have read that one?
There was a TV movie version of it, which was good too.
Oh, yeah. That's
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in the middle of that one right now. So
cool.
All right. What do we want to talk about next? We want to talk about, I know you guys have some experiences you want to share. Do you want to go there?
Sure.
Halloween night, Halloween experiences.
Yeah,
sure. So Halloween nights,
paranormal experiences in general, the events that have happened to you that you can't explain.
Oh gosh.
How about that?
it's always a good time of year to contemplate.
Where to begin?
Like that.
Scott told me he could probably fill up the whole show with this. So.
Yeah. I always keep an open mind about that stuff, but I don't just. I'm pretty skeptical, but still, there unusual things happen sometimes, and it's hard to dismiss them readily, especially when there's multiple people involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I both lived in a house in Westboro, Massachusetts, at 15 Cotter Street, at different times, and experienced weird things there. And so did my sister. When Scott lived there, he lived upstairs from my sister. And then later on, I bought the house from my sister, and I lived downstairs. My mom lived upstairs. And a number of us who lived there experienced strange things there. And it's a lot, so many things that it's just kind of strange. Like what? What? To give us an example. Well, I think I told this story last year, but I'll reiterate. On the 1-year anniversary of my father's death. Now, I had not mentioned to my son it was the anniversary of his death. I was sitting at my computer. On my right was a darkened bedroom we used as storage, and my son was standing on my left, and I was showing him something on the computer. And suddenly he looked over into that bedroom, and he said, with like recognition, like, "Grandpa," like that, like he had seen my father in that room. And the hair rose up on my neck. It's almost doing so now. And I looked in there, and I didn't see anything, but it was the 1-year anniversary of my father's death. And here's my son. He's young. He's autistic. He doesn't know, but he acted like he saw my dad in there. So later on, I made that into a bedroom, and later on in the bedroom I was using at the time, I was working third shift, and I'd come home from work, and it was daytime, and I hadn't quite fallen asleep. Now this could be one of those hypnagogic episodes where you think you're awake, but you're kind of in the middle. Yeah. But I was lying there, not seemingly, well, not certainly not fully asleep, and I felt somebody sit on the edge of the bed, depressed. And I thought, what's my wife at the time, Rose? What's Rose doing home now? I thought she'd come in, sat down, she was going to talk to me. So I opened my eyes and looked, and there was nobody there.
That's a creepy feeling. That would be creepy.
Something even creepier. When I remarried, my wife, Hung, and I used that storage room as our bedroom, the one that my son saw my dad in, apparently. And we were lying in bed talking one time, and we both swore we saw somebody look in the room and then pull back. Around the corner of the door. It was like a head came in like this, like,
oh my word.
Pulled back again. We both saw it. We were like, what the hell? And it didn't even look like it had the proportions of it. It's like a lollipop head on a long neck. That's what stuck in my head.
And it's both of you seeing it, so it's not just
yeah. It's one of those situations where the one person kind of sympathetically believes they saw something that a person saw. I don't know if maybe I influenced her to think that she'd seen it or whatever. I think that can occur too. So I don't know. It was like a split second, but it was just weird. Given all the other weird stuff that happened in that house, it's just another weird thing. Another one that comes to mind that I experienced was one time I was walking through my kitchen, and we had a stove that had pilot lights, you know. And as I was walking past the stove, I could swear I heard like the voice of an old woman whisper in my ear. And I heard the whisper, but I couldn't understand the words audibly, but I understood the meaning mentally. It was, look at the stove. So I looked at the stove, and the pilot light had gone out.
Holy
moly. You don't want gas coming with no light. So I lit the pilot. It was just, that was the way it felt to me, was that somebody had whispered in my ear, like,
remarkable.
Check out the stove. Look at the stove. And it sounded like a woman whispering right in my ear. And yeah, so I don't know. Another couple things happened to my sister while she was there. My sister said one time she was walking from one room to another, and there was like smoke, and she even went like this, like, as you know, like to part the smoke. Then she realized, like, why would there be smoke?
Whoa, I didn't know that. That's like what I saw there.
Like a misty kind of. And the thing is, my nephew, her son, saw this occur also. He saw his mom walk from one room to the other. There was like this mist or fog in the air. She was trying to wave at it. And then she turned and it was gone. And he saw that happened as well. So what are you going to make of it? I don't know.
All these stories you've told so far were at the same place?
Yes.
Yes.
This apartment on 15 Cottage Street. And Scott can tell his.
There's another good one that Wendy experienced. She was going to touch a door to open the doorknob, and she went to take the knob, and something twisted it in her hand from the other side, and there was no one over there on the other side of the door.
That one too.
Felt it twist in her hand.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Yeah.
When I lived there, you mentioned the mist. We lived upstairs from the apartment. It was Wendy downstairs at that time, but there was a little, really tiny apartment kitchen. But I came through the little hallway and stepped into the kitchen. And right as I stepped in, I looked over. There was a sink right in the corner on the other side of the room. And I looked in, and here is this like mist, like it coming up as if it was coming from the sink and just disappearing through the ceiling very quickly. But as I came in and I saw this, I'm like, what the, going right up into vanishing into the ceiling over the sink.
God.
Wow.
Scott, didn't you say, or was it Wolf, who saw a figure that seemed to be standing in the kitchen looking at the microwave as if it was befuddled by what the microwave was? Am I remembering
that? Sounds familiar. It might be after I wasn't living there, but I believe she saw a figure on the stairs, where you go in the front door, stairs go up to the second floor. And I want to say she said she could, or perceived to some degree, what looked like blue jeans and a red plaid shirt and a sort of amorphous blur from like the face up.
I remember that story now. Yeah. Wasn't there a kind of a ghostly cat that you or her saw one time too? Or
that would be Templeton. I could talk about the ghost cat.
And then I don't know.
Maybe there. I don't know, but that place is really, oh my word.
And again, everything you've related so far was at the same place, right?
Yes.
Right.
All of that was at that same building.
Oh, wow.
I was terrified to go in the basement. I could not go in the basement alone. I would have my dog come with me. Go ahead, Tia. Go ahead, Sam.
It was a kind of a creepy basement, actually.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I could not wait to get out of there. I'd have to run out of there. If I had to reset the water heater or something, I had to run and get out of there. I don't know. I don't know if it's much my imagination or what. Who could say with these things?
And this was as an adult?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not making fun of you. I just was curious.
And it's funny. I'm not scared of things too easily. I can take a walk through a cemetery at night. You know.
Right.
I remember when we were young, Scott and I took a walk through the cemetery in Westboro with our martial arts instructor, and he was a badass guy. And he was terrified. He was like hugging my arms. In a cemetery at night.
Really?
But it's funny the things that can scare people.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so that was that place. What other experiences you guys want to relate?
Scott, why don't you talk about Templeton then?
Yes, well, I lived in Templeton, Mass.
Which Lovecraft mentioned in one of his stories. I can't remember which.
Did he? Oh, cool.
One of the stories, a poem.
Worcester County, sort of northern Worcester County, very well wooded area, lovely area actually, and it's where I lived at a house that had been built by a wealthy tanner named Benjamin Reed in 1774, and it was a marvel of period detail, intact, very well intact, paneled fireplace walls. There were 7 fireplaces. Only one of them worked at the time that we know of, but it was an amazing place. And at any rate, it was very haunted. And in terms of believing in the supernatural, it's like my logic. I'm logical, and I'm inclined to not want to believe. And yet, when you have things happen, when you have like a dead aunt call your cousin and over the phone after she dies, it's like, well, there's not a lot of ways to explain that. So the supernatural might be like the world, which was believed to be flat, and we just might not understand it. You know, it may seem crazy and bizarre to contemplate it as a reality, but you know, we don't know everything as humans. But at any rate, the Reed House, there was a bunch of weird events, and it had been written up as being a haunted house, which we didn't know. It was with a past wife of mine who's gone now. But one time we're there, and a knock comes on the door, and these 2 cute little old ladies are at the door, and I say, "Oh, hi," and they say, "Hi, we're so and so and so and so." And so, how do you like living at we'll say the Jones house, or it was the name of a relative of theirs who had lived there when they were girls. And so how do you like living in the Jones house, or should I say the haunted house, a ghost house? And I said, no. Like, we had kind of had a feeling so far, but she confirmed it had been written up in an article. They sent me an article. There's a picture of the house of haunted houses of Worcester County. And it was fascinating. And incidentally, they turned out to be distant relatives of my wife at that time, Nancy, related to this woman, Bathsheba Spooner, who was like, I believe, the last woman hung for a crime in Massachusetts. This villainous figure who killed her husband after the Revolution. At any rate, episodes that we experienced in the middle of winter. Oh, well, again, a little more background. So the family that had lived there, the aunt and uncle of the little old ladies who showed up, they claimed they saw figures, that voices spoke to them. We didn't have anything quite that dramatic, but there was a muralist named Thor Carlton or Carlson who'd lived there in the after World War II and did a lot of renovation. And he had painted lovely murals in there, colonial murals, which were covered by Victorian wallpaper while I was there. At any rate, he was there one time alone working in a bedroom, and something violently banged on the wall. Boom, 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 right outside the main bedroom. And he wouldn't go in there again alone after that. So there's a history of people experiencing. We would smell lilac in the middle of winter. You'd smell it in the kitchen. You would smell bread baking in the house, and we weren't baking bread. One time, the doorbell rang, and at the side door, so I rushed to the window right over that and looked right down. Within just moments, there was no one there, and you'd hear people, someone walking down in the kitchen. There were times that we were so sure someone was broken in downstairs, hearing things. I would go down with a gun in hand. I was so convinced. There was apparently a ghost cat. I was in the room where I wrote The Sea of Ash in my study, and I could hear a cat purring in the room. And we did have a cat at the time, Hammy, but he was not there. Another time, we're in bed, and I feel the cat jump on the bed. They do that little circling for a comfy spot, settle down. And I look down, and Hammy is sound asleep. He's already out. So I don't know what cat came in, jumped up, did a little circle, but Hammy, he's sound asleep. Another time, the same thing. Feel the cat jump on the bed, walk a little circle, settle down. And I look over at the open doorway. Here comes Hammy walking in, jumps on the bed.
Wow.
That's pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
There was a few times I came in from working. Nancy was up in her office doing her medical transcription, and I heard this sort of sing-songy voice. It might have said my name, and I went up and I said, "Did you say something?" But whatever it was, she hadn't said anything. Another time, something similar. I heard almost like I don't know, maybe an old lady sing-songy voice, and when she had gone to another room, and I said, "Did you be saying something?" Singing? No. So that was weird. But
you say this house was built in 1774?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. That's pretty old. You don't get houses that age in the Midwest, and in places like Texas, Iowa, and so forth. But on the East Coast and New England, you do.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, but go on. 1774. Wow.
Yes, it was beautiful. What a place! Oh my word! And well, perhaps the most. I'm probably forgetting something. I have things written down, and I have emails that Nancy had written to my family, telling them this happened and that happened and such. But the most dramatic event, probably for me, was on July 4th, and probably 2003. And Nancy was taking a shower, and I was in the room where we had internet connection in her medical transcription office, and I hear her calling me, so to get in there, just calling my name. So I race in. She doesn't have to say anything. I stand there and I listen, and I go, fife and drums. I was hearing fife and drums, more than one fife, like colonial fife and drum music. And it was July 4th, and I'm thinking, well, is it coming from outside the house? Somebody driving by? It was kind of a countryish road. We had our own meadow and woods behind us. There was no one out there. If it was coming from any direction, that would have been the general direction it was emanating from. But so the shower was running too, and shower, you're getting hissing. Pipes can can rattle and such. However, I distinguished it from the sounds of the shower hissing, and she shut the shower off, and it seemed to be emanating from a corner away from the shower stall. It seemed to me to be coming from this corner with a sound that was unlike any reality-based sound that I'd ever experienced. It was a
Right.
quality of it that I can't articulate, that was just otherworldly.
Yeah.
And sure enough, fife and drum on the 4th of July. And incidentally, this happened in a room. It was at the back of the house. It had a very typical colonial arrangement of rooms. You had the major bedrooms in front. And then there was this long area at the back of the house, and there used to be a 2-floor L going off there that was no longer existing. But the L, I mean, this room that we're in modern times, it had been converted. There was a little office, there was a little bathroom, and then there was a little, another little room with a door to the attic. The bathroom had its walls constructed of the colonial paneling that previously had separated this long space into 2 parts. It was beautiful raised paneling, colonial woodwork, and they could do is they could take it and swing it up and hook it to the roof, the ceiling. I mean, and they did that because it was a ballroom. They would do that to make it a ballroom, to have dances there. Cool. And that someone in modern times had, cut up that paneling. You can still see the hook they would attach it to. But I mentioned that detail because I found it compelling that here we are in a room where people in colonial times were probably playing fife and drum and period music. And here I am on the 4th of July, all that time later, two relatively sane adults hearing fife and drum music in a bathroom made from that paneling. It's just, it's like it's a little hard to explain.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to explain naturally.
Yeah. Yep.
I like your thought about the supernatural, and I'm like you guys, I've got an open mind, but I'm skeptical, but just because you don't have an answer doesn't mean that the answer is X, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that just can't be explained. I like your thought about the supernatural, and maybe it's like the flat earth, and we used to not be able to imagine something like that.
There's some people apparently still can't imagine that the world isn't flat.
That's very true.
Pressing amount of people nowadays, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wow. Any other experiences you guys want to talk about before we move on?
I'm not sure. There's a couple that to me are pretty profound, but I don't remember if we ever mentioned them on the show before, or if we ever talked about, Scott, did we ever talk about the time?
That's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
We thought we saw Wendy walk across the...
We did.
Did we talk about that before?
We probably did, but it's a fascinating tale for people.
That doesn't ring a bell with me.
Well, the only problem here is that Scott remembers it happening in one house that we lived in, and I remember it happening in another house we lived in. But I remember I'm older, so my memory is the correct one. I swear. So, because I can remember us sitting on the linoleum tiles of the kitchen at 9 Cottage Street. This was a few houses down from 15 Cottage Street, the haunted place
which was haunted also.
Yeah,
the flying books.
Yeah,
flying books.
Flying books.
That'll be the next story. So
okay.
So I remember Scott and I were playing on the kitchen floor. There was a hallway, and to the left from our point of view would have been stairs coming down from the bedrooms, going towards the bathroom. Mm-hmm. So I saw we were playing. I saw my sister walk across toward the bathroom. She was wearing a nightgown, and she looked like she was sleepwalking. She walks by, like a second or two later, she walks by again. But this time, she was all, to my memory, a white like an apparition. It was like an after image of her. It was almost that you like you could think that her body walked by, and then her soul was trying to catch up. But she was still not entirely awake. And I remember like, did you see that? But for whatever reason,
we each saw that.
Yeah, but
how do you explain us both a shared hallucination?
What's the weird thing? Why the weird thing that you remembered happening in a different house, though? That's the kind of thing that makes you kind of question: did you convince yourself this happened? Did you convince the other person?
But I remember the way you describe her is perfect. What I remember is at South Street, the room that was her bedroom when she was there. I remember her walking by in a nightgown, and then another version of her, sort of maybe relatively translucent or a little ethereal looking. Coming, there goes Wendy. Here comes Wendy, a Wendy double. But was the face almost like, is it just that it was vaguely defined, or was it sort of skull-like?
No, I don't remember skull-like, but I think it was just vaguely defined, like it wasn't entirely...
Another version of her, just uncanny. We each saw that. How do you explain that?
Talk about the books, the flying books.
Yeah, flying books. I've got to hear this.
So it was a house that during the Civil War had been a recruiting station, and there was the upstairs was something creepy about it. We sort of invented our own mythology that a Northern soldier haunted our sister Wendy's room. And so when we would go in there, we would have to go, I'm glad I'm not in Dixie. We had that little ritual. And there were a few times that I remember being upstairs alone and looking out the second floor windows and kind of like imagining that there were these figures looking in they had like blurry flesh colored faces when they had the little blue cap and the Northern uniform, shoulders showing in the windows. And I remember it was like dinner time, something. I'm lying there in bed imagining these or freaking myself out. I don't know if I was somehow sensing it or entirely creating it, but there was another time going down at the bottom of the stairs. There's a window right at the door to the street. And I remember like a figure sort of, and again, I don't know if it was something I was mentally seeing or just imagined with my imagination entirely, or if it was, I don't know, but what my memory is of a blur face, pale face, with a little hat with crossed swords on it, the little cap, and I don't remember if it was gray uniform or what. But what's interesting is that these Civil War figures that I either sensed somehow or was seeing in my mind or entirely created, that was before I learned it had been a recruiting station during the Civil War. But here's the most dramatic event. Our bedroom, we had a bookcase my granddad had built, our granddad, and it was, I remember it being almost like painted like a flesh color. It was kind of weird. And there was a book in it that we were a little, it had its own like little mythology where it was a little scary because it came from our Aunt Barbara's house in Burlington, Mass. And that place was very haunted. She would be sitting doing her CPA work with a ghostly little blonde boy would watch her.
Yeah.
She claimed.
Really?
He'd stand there watching her, she'd say, while she was doing her paperwork.
And stuff would my dad there saw something levitate off the mantle one time. That place was creepy, that house. And it was like a ranch. It didn't look like a house that would like a 50s ranch or something you wouldn't expect. But at any rate, this book had this little aura of creepiness because it came from our Aunt Barbara's haunted house. Well, there it is in the bookcase that Granddad had built, and I'm up there alone, getting near supper time. The book fell over, and that creeped me out. So I was so scared that I wanted Jeffrey to come up because I don't know, I guess I didn't want to like move or go out of the room or something alone. So I was going to get Jeffrey to come up by telling him that a ghost threw a book out onto the landing. So from our open bedroom doorway, there's a little landing. The stairs went down in Wendy's room across the way. But so I like threw a couple books out, like frisbees out onto the landing. And then I went out onto the stairs. Jeffrey comes up the stairs. I come out onto the landing, and or maybe I was on the stairs. Was I on the landing? I think I was on the landing.
You were on
Well, books came flying out like yay high above the floor behind me out onto the landing. Came
like they're skittering out, like
yes.
Oh, you're kidding me. Both of you guys saw this?
Mhm.
yeah,
Wow. How many?
It's
About how
fun.
many books?
a couple, right?
There's several. I want to say like three or so after the ones I
Funny because
threw
Scott
out.
started it and it followed through, which leads me to think that, and also with the way that you were kind of like creating the ghost of the, it kind of makes me think it's like a poltergeist or even a tulpa, where you're projecting something out unconsciously and you're responsible for the activity that's occurring, you know?
Well, how how do you explain books flying?
Telekinetic.
I mean, there's no good
Well,
explanation for that, you know.
I don't know if people talk seriously about poltergeist anymore, but I remember years ago looking at psychology books even, and sometimes they would kind of, some of them would be somewhat open to the notion that poltergeist activity is created by the human mind, you know.
And oftentimes a troubled teenager. I wasn't quite
Yeah.
a teenager, but I was a crazy kid.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know if I ever told you this story, Scott. It occurred. I just remembered it as we were talking about Cottage Street. It's in that same bedroom that we lived in. It was one time when I was alone in that room, and I remember I got like dizzy and faint, and I had to lie down on the floor because I was dizzy. And all of a sudden, I saw like a mental image of somebody standing in the center of a ring of people, and I was one of the people in the ring of people.
Hey.
And they were throwing stones at this person who I think was a woman. And everything looked like it was shot through a yellow filter. Everybody looked yellow. She looked yellow. I don't know what the significance of that is. But everyone was throwing rocks at this woman. And I was in the ring. I was one of the people who apparently was like throwing rocks at her or whatever, you know? And
you guys lost me for a second.
Yeah, I saw you froze there. But so I don't know. It was like a ring of people.
Word.
So it was just like a kind of a vision I had. So you wouldn't think too much of that. Maybe I was
bizarre,
right? But another time, okay, now living at South Street. I found a cigar that Dad had, and so I go outside and I thought, what's it like to smoke a cigar? So I light it up and I'm inhaling it, you know. Oh crap! And I had to sit down and lean my back against the car until the dizziness went away. I had the same vision again. Standing in a ring of people, everything looks yellow, and a woman in the middle, and we're all like throwing stones at her or whatever. And I remember feeling guilty about it. And so I don't know, was it,
wow.
Did it just make such an impression on me that first time that I remembered it, and my subconscious brought that memory up again when I got lightheaded again years later? Or was it something from a past life or whatever?
But years later, the same vision.
Yeah. Of standing in a ring of people, everything looks yellow, and we're stoning somebody.
My word! I wonder if it relates to Elizabeth Howe.
Yeah, I don't know. I just remember it was. I felt like a sense of guilt that I had participated in this thing, that I was one of the witnesses or participants in this kind of incident, and it's just weird that it occurred. If it had been once, it's like your mind can conceive of the weirdest dreams in a split second. Our dream imagination would put any author to shame. We can come up with these things in a second. And maybe it was like a dream in my head when I was lightheaded, and I remembered it, and that dream came back again on this other episode. Who knows? But it was just weird. And it happened in that room at 9 Cottage Street where the books fell down and then started to become more active.
That is fascinating. The same vision twice, and the imagery. Wow, very compelling.
It's weird, sometimes weird things happen. I recently, like I mentioned, how Hung was drinking that potion made out of caterpillars that have been parasitized by fungus, and they drink this in China and Vietnam. They think it's good for your body and can cure cancer and everything. And she gave me a little sip of it. Here, try this. This potion's so good, and it's so expensive in Vietnam. And I just took one hit of it, and I got instant headache. But in my mind flashed in yellow letters, like yellow letters. I don't know what it is with yellow. Arsenic. I don't know what arsenic tastes like, but it was like arsenic. And so I looked it up online. What is this stuff? And don't you know that in China, they were putting arsenic into this potion to make it, because arsenic is a metal, to make it heavier, because this stuff is so expensive. The heavier it is, the more money you get for it. And so it was outlawed in China because of the arsenic content. And you can imagine how bad something has to be outlawed in China.
That'd be pretty bad.
Yeah. So I refused to drink it anymore. No, she wasn't trying
Probably
to
has lead paint in it too.
drinks this stuff herself, you know. But I don't know why did the word arsenic jump into my head in yellow letters, you know. I don't know.
Wow.
Even just like, oh,
It's pretty wild.
people have concluded by now that I'm just totally insane. But
gee, that is fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah. You guys have had some experiences. Okay. Any others before we move on? Or did we?
There was well, it didn't happen to either of us, but it happened at our well, I want to say our family home, where we spent most of our childhood in Westboro. Our aunt Nell had just died, and she was really our great aunt. Not our aunt. Our great aunt had just died, and our cousin Jody was there. She was my mom's sister's. She is my mom's sister's daughter. At any rate, the phone rings and Jody picks it up, and she hears a voice. It sounds very distant and a little staticky and a little strange, and it's asking for Marge, Jody's mother, my aunt, and Jody goes, "This is her daughter, and maybe this is my daughter Jody." And the voice on the phone says, "It's your aunt." And then the voice is swallowed by this static on the phone and just